Hey guys, welcome to the Bill Barnwell Show. I am Bill Barnwell. We are here after what some would say was a compelling Monday night game. Some would say was a dismal and boring Monday night game. I will say I tend to lean more towards the former. I felt like this was a game with two pretty darn good defensive lines that were occasionally overwhelming and most often terrifying the opposing head coach in every obvious passing situation. We'll talk about all that, and we'll talk about the firing of Brian Daboll in New York, both in your ears on the podcast feed and on YouTube twice a week here. Joining me, a frequent contributor to the show, a frequent contributor to ESPN, one of my favorites, hopefully one of yours as well. If he's not, he should be. It is ESPN's Seth Walder. Seth, how are you?
I am well, Bill. I am well. I actually kind of enjoyed that game too, so I think that makes two of us.
Yes, you got some weird fourth downs that seem to be very triggering in some places, but I thought overall, we were talking before the show. Our producer Rafa was talking about before the show and comparing it to Broncos Raiders from Thursday night. That was a really bad football game to me. This felt like a game that was just dominated by the defensive lines. It felt like they were making plays. There were lots of tackles for loss. There was, in key spots, defensive linemen taking over. We saw a couple of big plays on offense, not very much. Some sloppiness, certainly, some fumbles where there did not need to be fumbles from both of the teams in this game. But it really felt like a game where the team that had the better defensive line won. And the Eagles came up with a bunch of big plays in this game, including a fourth down stop of Josh Jacobs, to come up with stops in key moments. It felt like the Packers wasn't like the playoff game where it just felt like they were really overwhelmed. And then they had some things that went against them, like, they fumble the opposing kickoff, they lose their best guard during the game, they are down their top three wide receivers by the time the game is over. That felt hopeless. It felt like there was no way they were ever going to win that game. If you're a Packers fan, it feels like you had a shot at winning this game, but it also, because you had a shot at winning this game and didn't, almost feels worse than the playoff loss to me. I don't know. How would you feel about this game if you were a Packers fan, Seth?
I think it would be frustrating. And, that Raiders-Broncos game, it's like, by the way, I think just wiped from my memory. It's like Men in Black.
4 days ago.
I know, but I don't know. It was also 10-7. And what happened in that game? I don't know. But like a week from now, I think I'm still going to be able to tell you about this game. Mm-hmm. I think I would be feeling frustrated if I were a Packers fan. I think one thing that really stood out to me about this game, Green Bay went really, really heavy on the run early in this game. And I think that is, to some degree, what you should have expected going into the game. Mm-hmm. You had the Eagles firstly, Green Bay leans run heavy in general. Yep, and the Eagles defense, if you look at the pass rate over expectation against the Eagles defense, it's negative. So they induce the run. And we really saw that, I think, today. The number that jumped out to me, and now I've lost it, of course. But
I've got a number. It jumps
here
out to
it is.
me.
86% of their snaps came against light boxes.
That is very close to the number I was going to have to
okay, what's your number? Tell me.
My number was Josh Jacobs with 21 carries in this game, 7 against neutral boxes with 7 defenders in the box, 14 each one of his other carries in this game, 14 carries against light boxes from the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you know what Josh Jacobs did with those carries, Seth?
I'm just 3.9 yards per carry.
2.9 yards per carry, and a 35% success rate for Josh Jacobs in this game. And that's partly a criticism of Josh Jacobs. It also is a sort of, I want to give credit to the Eagles defensive line, because playing with those light boxes in this game against a Packers offensive line that is banged up, not playing all that well, to be honest, they were able to control Josh Jacobs and control that spot. And I think if the Packers can run the ball effectively against those light boxes, it forces Vic Fangio to change the way they play on defense. It forces them to, go with more 5-man fronts, go heavier boxes, and that opens up play action. Like, it changes the way they have to play defense. And it felt like the Eagles never really had to go to a plan B, never really had to go to a counterpunch. It felt like they were going to force the Packers to move the ball slowly down the field, and the Packers were going to make a mistake or commit a penalty or take a TFL or take a sack, or Jordan Love was going to melt down before he got to the end zone, and they got there once the entire game.
And that drive was like the one time when that didn't happen, and the big play on that drive was a defensive penalty anyway. But okay, so coming back to this, I think I agree with you. Like, it didn't feel like it forced the Eagles to make a change up. And I think some of that is on Green Bay because they had one play action play in the first half. I mean, if you were going to have this run heavy offense, by the way, they entered this game with the highest EPA per dropback in the NFL. And you're going to have one play action play in the first half with that when you were running the ball like crazy. That doesn't make any sense. And just in general, I think it is playing into the hands of what the Eagles wanted you to do. They sat back for a reason. In general, running the ball is less efficient, and the Eagles knew that. And it's definitely going to be. And if you look at the Packers splits, they're dramatic. And so yes, the Eagles are saying we will sacrifice having. We're gonna have like these light boxes, and we know that puts us at risk. Maybe they felt more confident in their defensive line, but even if you look league wide at numbers on light box numbers for just across the NFL, multi-year offense, like passing versus running, even against light boxes, passing is much, much, much more efficient. And so I just think that you're letting the defense dictate to you the suboptimal thing, and that's sort of what the Packers did.
Well, I could see Matt LaFleur and the Packers saying, hey, we're letting the defense dictate what they want us to do, but that's really what we want to do anyway. It's sort of like, that just leans into what their desires and intentions were anyway. They just weren't good at doing it. I think that's the part that I find so frustrating is it's one thing to run a bunch against light boxes if you're succeeding doing it. That's okay. I mean, if you can average 6 yards a pop and you're picking up chunks and you're never in third and long, okay, I would rather be throwing a bunch. You're right about the differences between, it's still going to be beneficial to throw the ball more in those spots. But if you're succeeding running the football, it's okay. Like, we've seen some really good offenses. The Eagles last year, the Ravens last year, heavy run scripts, heavy run leans and neutral game scripts. Those offenses were great. They moved the ball effectively. No issues there. If you're not doing well running the football, you sort of have that Raiders offense from Thursday night, which I know you've forgotten, Seth, but I will remind you, in the broadest possible terms, it felt like everything was run for no gain on first down, screen doesn't go anywhere on second down, Geno Smith gets sacked on third down. That's too simplistic and too simple. And I know people will say, oh, it only happened once in the entire game, but that was what it felt like with the Raiders. It felt like they were running into a hopeless spot, putting themselves in third and long, and then failing in third and long as a result. Did you see the Jordan Love play action splits by the end of the game? So Jordan Love with play action, which he did drop back 6 more times for play action in the second half, 5 of 7 for 79 yards. Very solid numbers. 11 yards per attempt with play action. Without play action in this game, as a drop back passer, Jordan Love 15 of 29 for 97 yards. That is 3.3 yards per attempt from Jordan Love. And you tweeted about this as the game went on, especially early on. I think you tweeted about it at halftime. How rare it was to see even a downfield pass attempt in this game, let alone a downfield completion.
There were 4 at halftime between the two teams. That was
4 attempts.
4 attempts. Now, Hurts had a throwaway that definitely went more than 10 yards at the very end of the half. That doesn't count. But 4 attempts. None were completed. We shouldn't know. Now, maybe one, maybe some of them should have been. There was the Christian Watson throw at the very beginning of the game. And man, if he makes that catch, how different is this game? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that stat, I think, really summed up what had happened in that first half. Also, I want to add to your play action number. There was a Christian Watson 22-yard gain on a play action play, came back for an illegal formation. So his numbers were actually even, it was really working even more than that. The the downfield stuff was evidently not there.
And it's so weird to me. It's one thing for the Packers to have that happen. They're down multiple starting receivers. Matthew Golden didn't play in this game. Romeo Dobbs left injured. Jaden Reed has been out. They just lost Tucker Kraft to a torn ACL. I could see the argument of, hey, like, we're still trying to figure out our passing game in kind of a weird spot. For weeks to begin the season, the weakness for the Philadelphia Eagles was we're not throwing the ball downfield. Like it's all quick game and all short stuff with Jalen Hurts. And the offense wasn't thriving because they weren't running the football effectively and they weren't hitting deep shots. And then what got them going before the bye, where they started to have more success, was throwing downfield more often to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And yet it took so long in this game for the Eagles to even take a shot downfield. They do hit Devontae Smith for a touchdown on, as some have noticed, a deep post against quarters of all weeks. It just felt like all the things that I would have perceived as progress for the Eagles with their offensive philosophy heading into the bye week sort of disappeared after the bye. And that is either a product of them forgetting or a product of them being terrified of Micah Parsons and the Packers pass rush. Maybe a little bit of both, but it just didn't feel like the Eagles, even though they won this game, it didn't feel like they really had a good handle on like what really was working for them or what could be working for them on the offensive side of the ball.
And what's funny about that is that like that touchdown catch is there was a contested catch over Evan Williams. Really nice play by Devontae Smith. And it's one of these situations where, I mean, that whole drive was really just Barkley and Devontae Smith. It was not plays that were schemed open.
It was like a Barkley check down that was like the third or fourth option, and he just juked Carrington Valentine, ran up.
Okay, Saquon Barkley entering this game had 10 spin moves this season on rushes, which is twice as many as any other player in the NFL. And I just love that we track that.
That was the whole stuff. I love it. I love that it was just a sheer dedication to ESPN's tracking data. That is a very cool.
That's our video tracking team. A shout out to ESPN Research. I think. Wow, lost. What was the point? Oh, the catch to Devontae Smith. Okay, so that whole drive, Saquon Barkley and Devontae Smith, neither plays schemed open. Though maybe the Packers, I'm not sure if that was the intended coverage. You tweeted about that on the play, but either way, it was a contested catch over Evan Williams. And my point is just that the Eagles have elite receivers, and I think it's okay to force the ball to them and like let them have a chance to make some plays. Green Bay's secondary is not the group in general, or the corners aren't the group in general that you're super afraid of. And man, if I had A.J. Brown on my team, I would throw him the ball in some spots that I wouldn't throw the ball to for other receivers. And I think that's what you were getting at. But it just struck me that was the way that they scored their one touchdown.
Yeah, and again, like, it's one thing if they're just thriving doing other stuff. Like last year, there were probably games where they could have thrown it to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith more, but when you're thriving running the football, when you're putting up points, when you're controlling the game, like, that's picking nits. I'm not going to get too upset about that stuff. They also had one touchdown in this game. Saquon Barkley had 22 carries for a total of 60 yards. He had a big play as a receiver. I'm not putting that on anything Saquon Barkley was doing. There were multiple instances of Packers running free into the backfield, lots of tackles for loss, lots of guys running free or slipping blocks. There was some sloppy play from the Eagles offensive line, which had a new starter in Brett Toth, or has a backup starter, Brett Toth, at center. They lost Lane Johnson at right tackle in this game. Mr. On-off split himself. There were some plays where the replacements there missed some blocks or didn't pick up on stuff that led to at least one TFL I saw. And it's kind of the same thing with the Packers, where I think it's okay to be suboptimal by whatever the numbers say if you're succeeding doing something, because like there'll be some added benefits, there'll be some impact when you do want to do your optimal thing, ideally. But this Eagles offense wasn't succeeding doing what they were doing. And so I was shocked that they did not lean further into just, hey, let's get the ball in space to our dudes and trust that that's going to be a difference maker for us until really the fourth quarter of this game.
Right. It was so late. I think that sometimes when we analyze games, we look in retrospect and it's like, hey, this wasn't working. Why did they do it so much? But in the moment, you don't know what's going to work.
Right.
Right. And so I think at times, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this, where I'm overly critical in spots like that. But this is what it went way long. It was very apparent going deep into this game that maybe a changeup was required, and so I feel like it's justified in this case.
Yeah, Shil Kapadia of The Ringer just tweeted out, or just blue skied out, I guess, based on offensive success rate, that was the Eagles' worst regular season performance of the Sirianni-Hurts era, a 6th percentile offensive performance. The only game that was worse was the playoff loss to the Bucs in 2023, where the entire team felt like it was melting down over the final few weeks of the season. Just coming off of the bye, coming off of what had been, to me, their best sustained stretch of football, where they do score a bunch against the Vikings leading into the past. They dropped 38 on the Giants, which frankly is not always that hard, but they scored 38 really throwing the football effectively with Jalen Hurts. Throwing for 4 touchdowns in that game. And Saquon did have a 65-yard run, so he did have his big play. But, it just feels like, okay, we're halfway through the season. These are the Super Bowl champions. They have the most expensive offense by cash spend in the history of the National Football League. They brought back 10 of their 11 starters. The only starter who didn't come back was Mekhi Becton, who was probably their least important starter of the 11 on that side of the field a year ago. And yet, whether it's because they haven't found a solution with Saquon not being as explosive, whether it's because the offensive line is banged up a bit and not playing at the level they were last year, whether it's losing Kellen Moore, it just feels like they have nothing to sort of call like, okay, this is what our core strength is. This is what our core concept is. This is the thing that we do. Whereas in years past, they've had the quarterback run game. They've had A.J. Brown one-on-one. They've had Saquon and running into any boxes and thriving. It just feels like we're halfway through the year, and this team that should have it figured out more than anybody is still figuring it out.
I think this is from ESPN research. I think they have the second most 3-and-outs this year of any team, which is crazy. I think it was from ESPN research. I wrote it down.
Yes.
I saw it.
Also, by the way, the point you brought up earlier about get the ball to Saquon, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown. How many times did they give the ball to Will Shipley on 3rd and long in this game?
Yeah, that's a fair
Why?
point. Well, Barkley's not like the best receiving back. I mean,
he's pretty good. I mean, wasn't the hurdle last year on a counter target?
I can't remember. The spin move. This was a 40-yard receiving. That his big play on the touchdown drive was a receiving game.
Right now, the Eagles are last in the NFL in 3rd down and punt rate per True Media, 31.9%. The Broncos, who we just saw on Thursday night, are in 31st. The Vikings, who have had major quarterback concerns, are 30th. The Bengals, who have had a injured quarterback and or Joe Flacco, a super high variance option, are in 28th, along with Tennessee, which is Cam Ward fired their head coach because he wasn't getting the offense to work. So you have these teams that are struggling or incredibly high variance on offense. And then you have the Eagles who, I don't know, where were they projected heading into the season? If you polled 100 people in and around the league and asked before the season, where will the Eagles finish in, pick your favorite stat, EPA per play, points per drive, DVOA, whatever, I would have guessed 5th.
Yeah, I was going to say top 5, yeah. But what's crazy, Bill?
That way.
Can I tell you that? I mean, that third and punt
yeah
stat.
Yeah.
Despite that, we're going to wake up tomorrow and FPI is probably going to say the Eagles are the favorite to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. And if not, very close to it. So,
do you think that's warranted or fair?
Well, do I think it's warranted or fair? I need to look at the strength of schedule.
Two questions.
Yeah.
Do you find what if you can find what the number is? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Do you think the Eagles the 2025 version of the Eagles, which we now have a half season of data on, do they have the best resume of any team in the NFC?
Do they have the best resume?
Yes. Based on what you've seen from them versus other teams in the NFC through 10 weeks of NFL action, which are now complete as we sit here on Monday night for this Tuesday morning show, compared to the Lions, compared to the Rams, compared to the Packers. You don't think the Eagles have the best resume?
The best resume? No. I think it's different than projecting projecting the NFC. But because I think, firstly, they're not only what we've seen this year. I think that we still they won the Super Bowl last year. There's some predictive value in that, and then record wise they have a I don't want to say they have an edge. They're the same as other teams, but I mean, they have a better record than the Packers, right? That would be another team that could have conceivably been a number one seed candidate. I think that it'll be close. I think I looked earlier tonight, and so the number that I have is if I just take what we know and I lock in an Eagles win. So I don't know anything about how this game went, and I think it put the Eagles at 31% and the Rams at 29%. I think so. That was very close. So that's close enough that the way the game went and the offense playing poorly is gonna I would expect their rating will drop after this. So it may be that they'll be second, but I mean, when you consider the record, they have the division, that's not a concern. The Eagles or the Seahawks and Rams play each other twice still. You're
a very brave man, Seth. You're saying that the division, the NFC East, which has not had a repeat winner in, I believe, 2 decades, you're saying it's locked up for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, so 2 decades. So will you give me 19-1 here, or what kind of odds are you going to give me?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I will say 2 years ago, this team was 10-1 and did not win the NFC East. Not saying it's going to happen again. Not saying
I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to go out on a limb. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win the NFC East in 2025.
Let me ask you this.
Okay.
This is a more serious question. FPI is going to put a number out there for the Eagles to win the NFC tomorrow. You mentioned probably going to come in right around 30%, maybe a little less, based on how they played in this game.
That has to be top seed. Top seed.
Top seed, okay. What will their chances of winning the NFC be per FPI? If you had to estimate.
I can give you a number. It's just going to take 2
Here
seconds.
We go. Seth is hacking into the FPI frame.
Same caveats, okay?
Same caveats. I'm not looking for the
number
to the decimal point.
I can't give you exactly a number. It's going to be something. It will be lower than that, though. It will be lower than. So I think it's going to give them something like an 11% chance to win the Super Bowl. So roughly though. So you are a occasional bettor, someone who writes about betting for us at ESPN. Would you want to bet on the Eagles to win the NFC at those implied odds? Do you think that would be a fair bet? Do you think it's a value bet, an opportunistic bet, or are the Eagles overrated perhaps by FPI and by whatever that number would be? I think that I would probably just be a hold. Honestly, I know that's a boring answer, but I don't.
No, that could be fair.
I wouldn't bet, but it's not. But I wouldn't bet. I wouldn't bet against them either.
So you think 11% is basically fair?
I think that's fair. I don't think you're gonna I bet you don't get odds that good on the on the yes. I bet the yes odds are going to be worse than that. So probably. I wouldn't bet them.
And there's some vague, obviously.
Minus 1,200 or something. What?
Yeah, there's some vague built into that line.
Oh yeah, no, there absolutely is. Yeah, exactly.
But devagued, I would say. I don't know. I'd be intrigued.
You're against. You would bet against. That's the vibe I'm picking up.
I don't know. I don't. But the thing is, I have reservations about the offense, no question. But the defense is really good. Jalen Phillips looked great in this game. He made a real difference for them. Brandon Graham had a big tackle in this game, had a big TFL created a TFL on a jet sweep in this game. That defensive line won them this game. Like, they were the best part of this game were the Eagles defensive line and the players there. And we've seen them, that unit carry them to the Super Bowl a few years ago and then win it last year. And it's not single-handedly. Obviously, Jalen Hurts has to play well. Obviously, they had Brock Purdy get hurt in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago. Obviously, they benefited from playing against a Chiefs team that did not have a real left tackle in the Super Bowl. But, like, I don't know that I believe in defense wins championships, but I don't know that I don't believe in great defensive lines give you the best possible shot outside of having a superstar quarterback of winning a championship, which is not as pithy or fun to say.
It's not, but I think it's still an interesting take, and it is reasonable.
I don't know. I mean, I just it feels like we're judging the 25 Eagles based on the 24 Eagles.
There's predictive value in a prior. I mean, that's what I would say.
But,
and so,
but I'm not saying there's not predictive value in having a prior. What I'm saying is we're judging that team compared to the prior team, which I don't think is quite as good. But I don't know that there's anybody in the NFC that I feel that strongly about either. And so it's more about the Eagles and how they rate versus the rest of the teams in 2025 versus the 2024 Eagles, which might have been an outlier in terms of how great a team that was in recent history.
That's true. And then the big factor here that we don't know as of this moment, but Lane Johnson's injury, I think, could play a huge role. This, one big difference from last year's team to this year's team is the offensive line has not been as dominant. And I think if you lose the best player on that offensive line for an extended period of time now, that could make a big difference.
It can, for sure. I mean, that is a real injury. And even if he comes back, I mean, this is still this could still be a situation where he comes back and then gets hurt again later on. Like, it is always a scary thing. And that has been a historic difference maker for the Eagles over the course of multiple quarterbacks, multiple head coaches, multiple offensive coordinators, multiple schemes. No matter how you split it, it is worse without their star right tackle on the field. And we have a meaningful sample because he gets hurt every year. But he's a fantastic football player. And if you go back and watch the tape, you'll see a couple moments in this game where you'll see very visibly mistakes that are being made because Lane Johnson's not on the field. One more question on the Packers, then I'm going to get to Brian Daboll.
Okay.
I would say there is a perception about the Packers, not amongst you and I, but I would say in the broader football watching public, that this team is unserious, a waste of time. They are always going to disappoint us. They can't be trusted. They've now lost consecutive games to the Panthers and Eagles. Losing to the Eagles at home, not the end of the world, but this was a winnable game for them. Losing to the Panthers, pretty bad. Losing to the Browns, pretty ugly. Tying with the Cowboys, not ideal. Do you think those viewpoints are fair about the Packers? And do you think there's anything they can do to help overcome that besides simply winning? Like, is there something about the Packers that you feel correctly leads people to believe that they should not be taken seriously?
I think it comes back to what I said at the top of this, which I think they have to be more aggressive. And that's both in run-pass splits and just in general. That Cleveland game, they were so conservative. They never threw the ball downfield. And it came back to cost them in that game. I have always been kind of a Packers believer, not always, but like in this season, sure, because their passing game is so efficient, and that's the most important phase of the game. And I just can't be out on a team fully that has that because it just shows like the potential. Now, I've been waiting for that to sort of like bloom into the record that you might expect, and it hasn't happened. And by the way, I just checked. I said they were first in EPA per dropback, and now they're fifth. After tonight, so they took a tumble there. So I think that's what I would say. So it comes down to. I still think they're a Super Bowl contender. Right? I really do.
I do too, and I can think of teams in the past where I would hear from fans who were completely and utterly sure that their team should not be taken seriously, or neutrals who thought we were wasting our time thinking of a team until they did it. I think about the Colts with Peyton Manning, where it was, we're always going to lose to the Patriots and Tom Brady. They're never going to pull it out when it matters most, until they did pull it out when it mattered most. The Giants with Tom Coughlin, a very similar thing. That team was perennially frustrating in the postseason. They were seemingly on their way out of the playoffs in 2007 with a late season struggles. They turn things around, get hot in the postseason, things change. Even the Packers, the first iteration of the Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl Packers, where they had a bad record of one-score games, they had missed the playoffs, they lose in the wild card round in like a crazy shootout, and then they're a little bit over 500 late in the year, in I think it was 2010, and then they go on a winning streak at the final month of the year, and they go through the playoffs as the 6th seed in the NFC and win the Super Bowl. Andy Reid. I mean, Eagles fans, they don't say it now, but I promise you, when Andy Reid was in his last days with the Eagles fans were completely and utterly sure he was not cut out to win a Super Bowl. And then he struggled with the Chiefs for years, right? The Chiefs had tons of regular season success, kept losing in the playoffs, and it was, Andy Reid is just not going to do it. He's not a Super Bowl caliber coach. And then he got a Hall of Famer, and he could do it suddenly. And the Packers, to me, added a Hall of Famer before this year in Micah Parsons, or a guy who I think is on a Hall of Fame track, a Hall of Fame caliber player at a critical position in the prime of his career. I still believe they can do it based on what we've seen at their best. They were third in the NFL in DVOA last year. Don't have the numbers through this week's game. They are sixth heading into this week against the Eagles. I don't think they're going to drop a ton. The Eagles were ninth in DVOA, and it was a close game, and Packers were a little unlucky. I think they had 2 fumbles, lost to the Eagles 1. But I just think we're too confident about what we have seen so far as the sole evidence for how a team is going to play moving forward. And you can use that for anything. You can be Tennessee is going to go undefeated in the second half of the year because we haven't seen them play well. And it's that's probably not going to happen. But we've seen the Packers play really well. The numbers say they played really well. They've had great games. When they've lost, there have been some excuses here or there, or some very close defeats. Not saying they're going to, although I did pick them to win the NFC this year, so I feel like I'm going to have to stick with that.
Oh, I did
the
too.
Postseason, which is not going to be fun. There we go. We are stuck on the same bandwagon here. But I just don't think you can rule it out. I do think just because we saw them struggle tonight, just because they've made mistakes, just because I think there's been some frustrating moments, and I agree with you about them not being aggressive enough on offense, I still think they can have a hot stretch and put it together.
It's such a dangerous fallacy to fall into. It's never happened, so it will never happen.
Right.
And there's just, I think about the Ravens and the Bills right now in the same way, right? And if the Bills and the Chiefs play in the playoffs this year, and it's going to be look, happen again. Bills won the regular season. What's going to happen? The example that comes to me from another sport, and I'm not even a huge college basketball person, is Virginia. People said for years, Virginia, that system, it can't win in the tournament. It can't win. And then they won. And it's and so it's just everything is it hasn't happened until it happens. And so I think keep it in mind. Bill, there's one more thing we have to hit in this game before we hit Daboll, though.
What?
Nick Sirianni's 4th down decision at the end of the game. We gotta hit.
You really want to do the 4th down?
No, I'll tell you why I want to do it. I want to do it because we got it. This is important. This is public relations. We got to make sure everybody knows Analytics didn't say go for it. All right. That's the one thing I want to say. All right. Our model, and I bet our model had punt. Strongly had punt. Strongly had punt. So I want to see tomorrow, these new wave analytics guys, they're always saying go for it. All right. 4th and 6, up 3 to plus 35. We had punt. 33 seconds.
Can I just say one thing, and then we can move on?
Mm-hmm.
It was very funny to hear or see skepticism about analytics, which nothing is perfect. No data set is perfect, and analytics are not perfect. It's just evidence, but it's not perfect. It was so funny to see that in an Eagles game, where their general manager is Howie Roseman, their owner is Jeffrey Lurie. They have been leaning into analytics since I was in college, before I was even a writer at anywhere. They still do it now. Not going to say every decision is made with data, but they're the most aggressive 4th down team, or one of the most aggressive 4th down teams in the league. Have been even before the tush push. They won a Super Bowl throwing to their backup quarterback on a 4th and 1 against the Patriots. It just struck me as so strange. Because if it's a Browns game, okay, I could see why you get skeptical of analytics. I might argue that analytics were not the problem with the decision they made that set the franchise back 5 years. But at least you could say, okay, they lean super into analytics and they have not been super successful. Okay. The Eagles are one of the best franchises in football, and they use data and have people in meaningful roles whose jobs are predicated on their ability to work with data and got them into the organization to begin with, more so than any other team in football. And it just strikes me as so strange that you have this wild success story for analytics, and at the same time you're like, whoa, those analytics, I mean, geez, you can't doesn't account for everything. Okay. Counts for enough for the Eagles.
Yeah, it's the conversation keeps me employed, so I'm always here.
It is. And there's certainly always things to learn, certainly always things that data does not capture. But the Eagles, I will just say, they are a team that has been very open to using data to make their processes better for a long time, and I think that has been a major benefit to them as opposed to a detriment. But we'll move on to another spot in the NFC East, another team that are not as progressive as the Philadelphia Eagles, another team that maybe would love to capture what the Philadelphia Eagles have done over the past 15 years, but don't really seem to have a path or process to get there. And that is the New York Giants, who, after, I will say, ironically, one of the 3 worst coaching decisions in terms of a kick a field goal, go for it decision any coach has made this year. Is that fair to say, with what Brian Daboll did yesterday against the Bears?
Ooh, I don't think I would put it there. I don't off the top of my head. No. I mean, we had it as a clear go, but in terms of impact, Nick Sirianni's go for it today was way more costly.
Roger Sherman, who publishes the excellent sports newsletter.
Yes.
I believe he said, I forget what the exact numbers were, but I believe teams had a 4th and goal from the 1 yard line. I think every other time this year they've gone for it. And the Giants not only kicked, but they kicked from the half-yard line because there was a penalty on the prior play.
Listen, it was bad. It was bad. Caveat of the game situation, the reason why they went for it is not unapplicable, right? It put them up 2 scores in the second half, right? And it does matter. It was way too early to be thinking that way. But
sure,
it's a lot different than in the first quarter.
It was 19 for 20, excuse me. And the only other time was, I believe, when the Chiefs kicked the field goal on 4th and goal from the 1 yard line against the Bills at the end of the first half.
It's most offensive because it's like one of the easiest ones to spot, right? It's like right to Roger's point, 4th and goal from the 1, you just go for it unless the situation is sort of clearly dictates otherwise.
Right.
So yes, I think it is true. I do like to evaluate these on like 2 axes where you have like the impact and then the obviousness. Yep. And so this is high on the obviousness scale. I think we had it as a 2-point swing. Okay. So not that crazy. You'll see multiple 2-point swings in a just in a regular Sunday. Okay.
But you have it at very high on the obviousness scale.
I would call that pretty high on the obviousness scale.
Yeah. Anyway, Brian Daboll, not fired, I believe, for that, but fired because this team blew a series of close games where they were ahead. The Broncos game wasn't even close. They were dominating that game and way ahead and still blew it. The offense has been inconsistent, but certainly promising. Some positives, but Jaxson Dart leaves the game last week with a concussion. There was the saga where a couple weeks ago he was in concussion protocol, and Brian Daboll basically broke into the medical tent to try to get him out of it successfully. The defense has been a mess, which Brian Daboll deserves some of the blame for, given that he's the one hiring the defensive coordinators in New York. But Seth, I guess I want to get back to like the broader question about Brian Daboll, which is, do you think he had done enough over the course of his broader tenure in New York to prove to you that he was not the best option to develop Jaxson Dart moving forward?
I like the way you framed it.
And I think I framed it with a double negative, so I apologize if that was I wasn't trying to like get you by being obtuse with my poor grammar.
I'm not certain that. I mean, like we have like N of 1. Jaxson Dart has played with one coach and it's gone really well. I mean, like for a rookie, it's gone really well. And so you cannot be sure about that. I don't think that precludes you from firing a coach. I think that you don't need to be certain that you don't have the guy before you fire him. And
that's a double negative. I like that.
Right. And I think that what could have been frustrating, it is funny. I think like the come from behind stuff. It's like, it's like if they just lost to Denver by 10 regularly, would that have been better? I mean, they really dominated against a defense for a while that was like a team for a while that we thought was really good. And so like, to me, it's like kind of a better sign than if they just sort of fallen behind and never really.
But that's the story of the Brian Daboll era.
Yeah, like, I know, but I think the other factor though is Jaxson Dart, the way he was taking hits, and since week 4, he's been contacted 84 times. That's second most in the NFL among quarterbacks, only behind Justin Herbert, and I don't even think he has tackles anymore. So Dart, I think it is tricky because the way that you get the most out of him is going to involve some contact. So I don't think that it makes sense to be like, oh, you found your guy. He's got to just sit back there. You're going to protect him. But it's not. It's also like the Giants' offensive line is fine. It's not like that's not the reason. And so, and I do think that if you're ownership, you're looking at this and you're saying like, well, who's the most important person? It's Dart, and we want to protect him. And I know that had been a conversation in New York, like even before this game, about the hits he was taking. And so,
for sure,
to me, that's kind of like the thing that maybe you can that I think can point to like, well, why would you do this now? Because if you remove that, to me, my inclination would have been, if you were going to keep him at the start of this year, if you weren't going to do the full reset, which I think would have been probably recommended. If you're going to do that and you've had the success kind of on offense, then you might as well just let him ride it out because you just get the extra data points for the rest of the year. It's the contact part that I think
Kafka.
Go ahead.
They're replacing him with Mike Kafka, so it's not like they're going to be like a drastically different offense.
Right.
It's going to be Daboll's assistant.
I guess that's the upside too. Is like Kafka's been a head coach candidate. You can get a look to see. So there's some upside. But to your original question, no, am I sure? Absolutely not. It's possible that he does help unlock Dart.
Yeah, I want to say two things, and your points are correct. Two things, and I'm not saying this is as a disagreement with you, but more to say, like, I think a thing we have to acknowledge about quarterback contact is some of that is scheme and some of that is the player. And Brian Daboll clearly thought the best version of Jaxson Dart in this Giants offense involved a heavy dose of the quarterback run game. And that was running him between the tackles. It was, power concepts, gap concepts, RPOs where he was able to keep the football. I think you could have gone to Brian Daboll as owners and say, listen, we're either firing you or you take these plays out of the playbook and you're not calling his number in those spots. I think you could have done that without firing him. Maybe they did, and Brian Daboll said, screw you, I'm leaving. I think you could have done that to protect him. But part of the job is also Jaxson Dart's responsibility. And whether it was at the end of those runs, whether it was on scrambles where they weren't called run plays, whether it was just the way he plays football, Jaxson Dart's taking hits because Jaxson Dart is still not really a fully formed NFL quarterback. And he's been Superman for 6 weeks. Like, he keeps going to the concussion protocol and just passes it with flying colors until this past week. Like, he's been taken out of the game every single week, I believe, except for one so far as a starter. And that's not necessarily on Brian Daboll. And I don't think Mike Kafka's going to fix that, because he can go to Jaxson Dart and say, hey, slide, go out of bounds, protect yourself. I'm sure Brian Daboll was doing that because they're not getting any benefit out of Jaxson Dart getting hurt. Clearly, Brian Daboll, I'm sure, wanted Jaxson Dart to be on the field and healthy because he knew, he saw what it was like with Russ. He didn't want to go back to that again. I have to imagine Brian Daboll was saying, hey, protect yourself. But Jaxson Dart has not been doing that. And that's on Jaxson Dart. That's not on Brian Daboll. And then the other part of it, Seth, that I find so fascinating about this, I'm not saying it's an argument to keep him. Maybe I am saying it's an argument to keep him based on what I'm about to say. But if you were going to hire a head coach this offseason to be the person to mold Jaxson Dart into a above average or potentially better NFL starter, you'd want someone who is familiar with the quarterback run game, familiar with modern offenses, has had success in multiple places, but more than anything, you'd want a head coach with a track record of molding a kind of dangerous to himself, inexperienced, exciting, high variance quarterback into a legitimately great NFL starter. The guy who has that resume, Seth, as you can probably infer from where I'm going with this, is Brian Daboll, who did that with Josh Allen in Buffalo. And so that's the part I find so difficult about this, is that the Giants fired Brian Daboll, and the guy they should be looking for, his resume looks a lot like Brian Daboll's resume.
I think you make a compelling point. You maybe moved my opinion here. Because also, some of the other things, like the game management stuff, that's very fixable. I mean,
yes,
it's just so much easier to find, to be able to make a coach become good at game. Like Pete Carroll is almost optimal this year, and so you can fix that. It's way harder to find someone with more of the schematic inclination. That's pretty interesting. The other part, Bill, I want to ask your thoughts on this that I found intriguing about this whole thing was that they said Joe Schoen would be leading the head coaching search. Did you find that interesting?
I did find that interesting, Seth, because these guys came in together. It isn't always the case that GMs and coaches who come in together leave together, although they certainly seemed on the same page until this past offseason and into the new year. But I do believe that while you can have criticisms of Brian Daboll, I think there's some positives for sure, but definitely some negatives and some things that I don't think have aged all that well. I don't know that Joe Schoen's done a great job. I mean, this guy let the Offensive Player of the Year and one of the candidates for Defensive Player of the Year leave in free agency last year, Xavier McKinney and Saquon Barkley. Spent a lot of money to replace those guys, or at least replace McKinney with Javon Holland. His free agent signings have been mostly inconsistent. I would say, iffy at best. His drafts, especially the top of his drafts, I don't think they've been especially great. Evan Neal's been a bust. Deontay Banks has been a bust. Kayvon Thibodeau has been okay to good, but he was a top 10 pick. Abdul Carter's off to a great start. Jaxson Dart is off to a great start. 25 draft looks great. I think that's what saved. Yeah, and Neighbors has been really good, but that was a top 5 pick. You're kind of hoping, like you're kind of expecting to have that be that spot. But Joe Shane's missed on a bunch of picks. Joe Shane, I would say more than I would hope for, or to a greater extent than I would hope for, given what he inherited, which was 2 top 10 picks in the draft. I guess I would just say that I don't think in New York anybody would have batted an eye if Joe Shane had also been fired as part of this purge. And I do think you can credibly make a case that people should be batting an eye that Joe Shane was not fired today, that Joe Shane is going to be leading the search and presumably will be in this job for years to come as the general manager for a second head coach and the next couple years of Jaxson Dart's career. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's hopeless. I'm not saying he's a terrible GM. I just don't know that we have enough of a baseline or basis to say that Joe Shane is a good GM. And if you're firing a head coach, you might want to bring in a GM to work with that guy so that they're on the same page.
Agreed. I think the most important part of this is that if you're going to commit to keeping Joe Shane, you have to commit. And what I mean by that is you said he'll be there for years to come. I would say maybe. I mean, we've seen teams go through this like off kilter thing, like Chicago's done it for years. Tennessee does it every 3 months. And you can set yourself up for a messy situation. You don't want a GM who feels that they are on the hot seat. I'm dead serious when I say this. If you were going to keep Joe Shane, you should hand him a massive contract extension as soon as you hire the head coach and say because you need him to be thinking long term. Like the worst thing you can have is a GM who is not thinking about thinking about the
Terry Fontenot situation right now in Atlanta.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, it's why, it's like, this is an aside, but I just want to say, I think it's a dicey area, but I'm just saying, when Miami fired their GM right before the trade deadline, I was thinking, if you're going to fire the GM, it's kind of smart to do it right before the trade deadline. And then you have a new guy in, you'd be like, I'm judging you just on how much return you can get for these players. I thought they were going to they were going to trade away more than just Jalen Phillips. But I'm just saying, that to me is the most critical piece of this. I think that those criticisms of Shane are all valid. But if you decide to keep him, you got to really decide to keep him. Make sure he knows that his interest is for the long term of the organization, not for keeping his job.
Unfair question to finish up here, Seth. Impossible question.
Oh, good.
To answer, which is why I'm asking you. Week 1 of the 2026 NFL season. It's the 1:00 hour. I assume they're not going to be in prime time. Giants are at home. It's a sunny, beautiful day in northern New Jersey. There's a shot of Cam Scatabo back from injury. Malik Neighbors back from injury. Jaxson Dart has grown a mullet during the summer. He's excited to play with his friends again. And they cut to the sideline. And there is a Giants head coach making his making his debut as Giants head coach. Or maybe it's a Giants reacher. Maybe it's Ben McAdoo is back for his second tenure.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Bill Belichick.
Maybe it's Bill Belichick. Who is the Giants head coach next year?
Okay, you're gonna make me pick a name. I'm gonna pick a name that is not. I'm gonna say Jesse Minter. It's not.
That was the name I was gonna say.
Yes.
Nice. I like it. I think that'd be a good hire.
Yeah, me too.
Watch it be like Mike McCarthy. Round 3. Oh, lot to come for the Giants. A lot of work to be done. Joe Schoen will be hard at work hiring that head coach. He's going to send this clip to ownership and say, listen, well-respected ESPN analyst said I deserve a massive contract extension for my 2-8
Deserve
New
has
York
nothing
Giants.
to do with it.
Deserves nothing to do with it. It's the right thing for the franchise to pay me, Joe Schoen, says the very wise, a very astute Seth Walder. Seth, where can people check out the work you do each and every week?
On ESPN.com. You can find all my work there on the NFL page, the sports betting page, and over on Blue Sky.
Awesome. Seth, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill.